The Louis Diaz podcast.
That's true. And so I think a lot of like the naysaying is governed by a lot of those people.
Yeah.
And I was thinking about your point before. I was like, it's really weird that in Australia we sort of still it's it's not acceptable to be a white person and say, I think it's
Well, no.
partly,
It's not that it's not acceptable.
no, it's thought of by themselves as like, I want to stay away from this.
They're sort of just like
That's what I meant.
Yeah, there's just people have these mental guardrails around what they're willing to do.
I did understand your point. I just wasn't good at phrasing it. I'm sorry.
Yeah.
But I also think like we have this because I dated this Irish girl once.
That's disgusting.
I know. I don't often like to admit it.
Yeah, I
Especially in
wouldn't be
public.
telling people that.
I dated this Irish girl. Actually, she was more than dated. We were partners for a while. And then
Partners.
I went to Ireland. And then I learned a little bit about Irish culture, like proper Irish culture. And
There's no such thing, but yeah, go on.
but I mean, like, not overseas Irish
Yeah,
culture.
for sure, yeah.
Like the history of what was happening in there.
Yeah.
We got to stop doing gags every like 3 seconds. And then, I learned about some of the trauma and stuff that some of those people went through, and the laundries and all of this. And I'm like, oh, okay. And I'm observing society, and I'm like, what I learned about their general way of being is that they have this massive bury your head in the sand mentality about anything bad, and whether it's cultural and historical or whether it's just something that happened in your family that day. It's like, we do not talk about this. We do absolutely not talk about this. And if I'm reflecting on like some of the stuff that you're saying, I'm like, oh, well, Australia being a British colony,
A lot of Irish here, yeah, too. Yeah.
inherited some of that. Let's bury our head in the sand
I
mentality.
think there is a bit of that. There's a bit of that old. We still, in some ways, are a British colony in our bones. We still behave. We sort of
Absolutely
behave
we
like
are. Please.
embarrassed English people.
Yeah.
Man, I think Australia so badly, at least when I was growing up, so badly wanted to be British. Like everything on the ABC was always like BBC programs. Even like my parents' generation, my parents are 70, their generation sort of sounds English. They like literally have a bit of an English accent. It's very bizarre. People sometimes think I'm English.
Bizarre.
Yeah.
Bizarre. I think you did that with a bit of a British accent too.
My grandmother was English.
You brought the twang.
Yeah. David. Don't put your hands on the table.
Really?
Yeah, that kind of.
I grew up with a stepdad whose mum was Irish. I think they were Northern Irish, actually, now reflecting on her accent. But anyway, I think going back to the point, I think it's a little bit about that bury the head in the sand mentality that stops people from being able to, I guess, lift their head out of the sand to do what you're talking about, is having a bit of critical thinking. Like critical thinking and being like, oh, actually, that's not offensive. Racism and observation are two different things. That requires you to first lift your head out from the sand and look around.
Well, we've also internalized all this dumb propaganda from America that talks about like white guilt and like white men being responsible for the, every single bad thing they ever, which is a very, like, I believe, more American perspective on the world, because America it just has been so stratified between white people are on top and everyone is like so far below. And we had that here too, but
That's true.
like Americans talk about structural racism, and like we have the White Australia policy. Like, I'm not saying Australia has not had significant problems, and I'm not saying white guilt shouldn't exist, but okay, America had slavery about 100 years longer than Britain had slavery. So if you look at the Britain doesn't have that relationship to blackness that America has to blackness, and then like all that cultural conversation in America gets funneled through, I think, mostly the black experience, and then it kind of works its way down to Australia, and then Australia is so devoid of its own identity that we just latch onto whatever America is saying, and we take the same ideas about race and power that are applicable to American society and try to put them on to Australian society. But like, Australia is not America. Like, I think it's like 30% of Australians, their parents weren't born here. This country is an immigrant nation. We are not, maybe we were a predominantly white nation, but we are not a white, look, I mean, you look around us, this is a multi-ethnic society, which is a great thing.
Yeah, it is.
And the idea,
especially in Melbourne.
And I feel the idea that white people are like inherently more racist, or if a white person says something, there is more power attached to it because they're white, and it's more damaging because of power dynamics, is reinforcing white supremacy. You're literally saying, I think white people are more powerful, and therefore their words have more meaning than other races, and therefore white people shouldn't say this, which is also the flip side of what you're saying is I think other races are inferior to white people.
There's a lot of contradiction in
For sure.
in these movements.
And
you're so right.
And I fucking love that Australia's multi. I love the fact that I love the fact that Melbourne doesn't look like it looked like when I was a little kid.
Yeah,
like,
me too.
My aunt came to Melbourne recently, and she was like, "What happened?" I'm like, "What do you mean, what happened?" And she's like, "We're all the white people." I'm like, "Who gives a fuck? Look at all the cool shit that's here now."
I actually think Asian people are quite attractive as well. It's like it got better looking. It got better looking. That's what happened.
That's a very funny thing to say. You're so woke that you've become like you're fetishizing.
I'm not
Asian
even
people.
not even woke.
That's really funny.
I'm not even woke.
Yeah,
I actually no.
Also, white people are
No
so
way.
white culture is like
As if I'm woke.
quite boring. I think.
I agree.
I envy. I
I
have friends
agree.
I have friends who grew up religious, and I'm like not religious. I wasn't raised religious, and I envy that they had a culture. And I guess because white culture is so predominates in Australia, you don't notice it because it's just the water you swim in. But I'm so envious of my friends that have like more of a cultural tradition that they can fall back on, and like a relationship with their parents that is predicated on a whole bunch of cultural norms that don't exist in Australia. It's like, you're 18, fuck off.
It's so true. I agree with everything you're saying. I love all those things as well.
Yeah.
I started going back to church last year. And the reason I hadn't been to church since I was probably 13.
Yeah.
So 2/3 of my life. And part of the reason was that I was starting to feel like something was missing, and that what felt missing for me was
Pedophilia.
what well, amongst other things.
Yeah, right.
What was what you were referring to before? What you were referring to was some of the values that you'll find in those teachings. I was like, where do you get those if they're no longer in society, and if, as you put it, all the way on the social side of things, all the Aussie society is you turn 18, you start drinking, you get your license, you run someone over, you go to jail, you fuck off.
Yeah.
Like, where do we go as a society to develop some values? And for me, the only place I could think of in that moment was like, shit, I better go to church and figure it out.
But that's the sneaky trick that religion plays on you, is they go, where are you going to get it? It's like they're a drug dealer. They're like, you can't get it anywhere else. And then they foist all this other shit on you. So they're like, they teach you a couple of morals, and then they're like, also, there was this Jew that we nailed to a piece of wood. And you're like, what? What are you talking about? And they're like, and also, if you don't wash your baby, it goes to purgatory. You're like, huh? Where did that come in? They just sneak a bunch of, spoonful of sugar stuff. But
I wouldn't disagree with you, but I also think, like, if you're going to get it, that's the price. If that's the price I got to pay to go somewhere where there's some values.
I would argue it's not the price you have to pay. It's just they're the only people offering that particular thing at the moment. Have you heard of the concept of third spaces?
No, please tell us.
So there used to be three spaces in society: the home, work, and the third space was the church, the scout group, the wherever else pedophiles go, the primary school, the playground, whatever. No, but it was like the church, the scout group, the sporting association, unions, trade unions were a big one. A third place where people could commune.
Are you still talking about pedophiles?
Yeah, well,
I'm thinking about trade unions. What? What are you talking about?
But we don't have that third space anymore. Now it's everyone's so atomized. It's home, office.
No, the third
office,
space
home,
is
office.
the internet.
The internet. But the problem with the internet, it's not a communal space. It's a bunch of fractured.
Trying to be.
It's a bunch of fractured community. It was actually, I would argue, maybe in the early '90s, like late '90s, early 2000s. It probably was a community. Forums, those old school forums.
And I think they still exist. Some of those.
They do, but there's nowhere where we all go, and that's important because we're all fucking different, and a bunch of us are like kind of unpleasant to be around if you haven't been around that kind of person before. Like the cool thing about church, and again, not religious, I think it's all bullshit, but how many places in society are there where working class people and extremely wealthy people commune for a couple of hours together?
Hosea Lane.
Yeah, but this is nothing. This has no meaning. We're not being taught anything here.
I know.
Like when I was in India, I went to this temple, and
You're well travelled, by the way.
yeah, well, I've ruined the environment with my carbon footprint. Whatever. They give out free meals at a lot of these temples in India, and it's incredible. They make it's some insane amount of meals, like say like 20 million meals a year
You're
or
kidding.
something. Yeah, because there's so many poor people who can't afford. Everyone in India, more or less, even if you're living on the street, is well fed because they can get free food from these temples. And the really cool thing is that it's part of their culture that you can literally be a billionaire. You will go in and you will volunteer your time. It's actually seen as an obligation if you're from a higher caste or a higher, if you're more affluent, you have an obligation to go in and feed the poor. You are obliged to spend time with people that aren't like you. And obviously, India has many, many, many problems with social cohesion and inequality and stuff. But I like that, and we don't really have that. That's actually one of the things I love about comedy. Is as far as I can tell, it's the most working class of the performing arts outside of music in terms of the audience, because it's cheap. Like in fact, it may be the most now because music's so fucking expensive. Like. If you go to the theatre...
You go to a pub and still watch a band.
Sure. Yeah, that's true. But where are the pub bands now?
Yeah, well, they're coming back. You're right.
But if you go to
They killed them for a while.
If you go see I don't know, Hamilton, it's going to cost you like $300 for two people.
Hamilton who? It's Hamilton.
The musical.
Oh.
Yeah, not just a dude called Hamilton.
Yeah, okay.
Or if you go see
Albertson.
The Lion King or something. Yeah, right. Yeah, he's my second favourite Kangaroos player. That's too expensive. You can't do that. You want to go see a band. If you want to see Taylor Swift, it's like super expensive.
What?
Like
Taylor Swift.
Where
tickets were like $1,000.
Yeah, where can you go that's like cheap, that's entertaining, that's not even movies are expensive. It's like go to the comedy club. It's like $20.
Have you noticed how the cinema's absolutely dead these days?
Yeah.
That's wild.
Mm-hmm.
Like if you stop charging everyone $50 for popcorn, maybe more people will come.
Yeah, well, everyone's got big flat screen TVs at home, and they've got Netflix, so they don't need. But anyway, so like, that's what I like about comedy is that like, you will see rich people, poor people, everyone's kind of together. I think that's a valuable thing about that art form.
Yeah,
and in America, it's super working class. It's really cool. Like. You can go see a big comedian for like $50.
I like how you put it before that it is like a release valve.
Yeah.
Comedy.
Yeah.
I think that's really true about it. And one of the things that I talk about often on the podcast is like, we're sort of peaked at this industrial revolution. We're at the peak of it, at least for now.
Yeah.
And what happened is corporations gained a lot of power over the last 100 years, right? And that power came with like a layer of elitism. It was like, if you want to work here, you need to come to an interview and you're going to be up against all these other people and we're going to select the best of you.
Yeah, so you're in competition, constant competition with other people.
Yeah, and there's a historical, some of these companies have been around for many decades now, and so...
sorry to interrupt, but this goes well before the last 100 years. The East India Trading Company, I think, was famously...
Of course.
I think that it was famously described as a nation state in the guise of an enterprise or something like that.
And that's really interesting, and you're right. This does go way beyond that. I think the only reason I talk about the last 100 years is because some of those companies are still around today.
And it's also become much more concentrated.
Yeah.
The East India Trading Company was like one of maybe two multinational company. Now there's 50, 100, whatever.
Reminds me of Pirates of the Caribbean.
Well, that's what they're, they're in Pirates of the Caribbean.
Yeah. And with all this kind of elitism comes like these expectations. You need to do this. You need to behave like that. This is what we expect of you. This is the human. This is how we manage our human resources. We're going to do your performance review.
Even the term human resources.
Yeah.
You're a resource.
Yeah. Exactly. All of this stuff is fairly modern as well. And so I think that's why comedy, like to your point, is so prevalent amongst the working class, is because, in our day jobs, we have to put on these suits and wear these masks and become people that we're not really authentically allowed to be our full self, right?
Which is, I think, why people flock to artists and art to escape and to the role of the artist is to There used to be a great YouTuber called Zay Frank. He's still around, but he was the first guy to do video blogs. I really love Zay Frank. In like I think it was like 2004.
Man, you're old school.
He did a daily
How old
vlog.
are you?
30.
Shit, man.
Yeah. Zay Frank had a good line when he would end his vlogs, and he would say, "This is Zay Frank thinking, so you don't have to."
Yeah,
I always like that, because that is kind of the role of an artist. It's not that other people don't think. It's like, fuck, man, it's fucking hard to take the time to sit down and think about shit.
Yeah, that's a good line.
Yeah, I always like that.
I might steal that.
Yeah.
No, I'm not going to steal that. That's a great line. He
Yeah.
deserves to. He needs to. What is that? Trademark? He needs to trademark that line.
I think it's decades old at this point. But yeah, I think you're right. That is something that artists can provide to society. But also, I mean, we're just inundated with so much self-reflection. I mean, it's just the society is constantly navel-gazing at itself and like apparently not learning any lessons either. There's probably been more books printed in the last 20 years than there were in the previous 200
Which
years.
is wild considering the internet's around.
Yeah. There's probably more text has been written on the internet probably in a day than was written in all of human history before that. Like we have just had this glut of information, and it's seemingly endless amounts of information, and from which zero lessons are being derived.
Yeah. I wonder why that is. Yeah. What stage of humanity are we in now?
The
We're
last.
like, ooh, the information.
The end.
I
was just in. Well, I mean, because I was
at
just
the end.
I was just overseas in
Yuval Noah Harari would agree with you.
yeah. I was in Taiwan to see it before it's gone. Was what I said to them.
I saw that joke, by the way.
Yeah, that's literally why I went. I was like, that's not going to be there in 4 years. And it was interesting walking around. You're like, oh, it's just like everywhere else now, which is a shame. There's like a Uniqlo, and there's like a McDonald's and a Five Guys and a, whatever it is, Hungry Jack. It's a Hungry Jack's, and it said 100% Aussie beef. And I'm like, what the fuck am I doing here then? Why did I travel all this way to see 100% Aussie beef?
That's true. That's
It's
pretty sad.
everywhere's the same place now. It's depressing to go to the places that used to have their own feel to them, and it's like these multinational companies just come. I went to Hawaii once on the way to America. Like we got a flight to Hawaii and then Hawaii, and I was talking to a local guy there, and I was saying like, oh, like it must be beautiful living here. He's like, man, no one from Hawaii lives at this part of Hawaii. This is the tourist area. This is where the hotels and the Marriott and the Hilton and the Adidas store and everything is. And the way he described it, he's like, it's like there's a big vacuum in Hawaii sucking all the money up, and the tube goes back to some Swiss bank account. It's like everyone who lives in Hawaii, well, a lot of people, are poor. If you're a native Hawaiian who grew up there, you're poor. And all the good places in your society have been stolen out from under you by wealthy corporations that pay no tax, and they just suck all the money that the tourists bring in out. You get paid like $10 an hour to service rich people from other countries who want to lie on Waikiki Beach.
I reckon comedian is the perfect job for you, bro.
Yeah. I can't do any of the other ones.
Your critical thinking levels are right where they need to be good and successful in this art.
Man, wait until the Adderall kicks in.
Have you got some?
No, but I'll get some later. I mean, this looks like the lame way to buy it.
It'd be so easy to buy something here. Look at all the shoes up in that. Look at all the shoes.
That's the thing, right? Isn't it like drug dealers put shoes up in the thing?
Yeah, look how many pairs of shoes there are there.
Is that is meant to be a thing? Like you can buy drugs if there's shoes there?
But then people just throw shoes up there
I'm always wonder how they do that. So you tie them together and then you throw them over?
Yeah, and how do you identify your drug dealer if there's
Yeah.
many shoes there? It's like, mine are the size 7.
Yeah. Does every drug dealer, he's like, no, mine are the Nikes.
The Nikes. That's
Also,
that's Coke.
Aren't
That's
they
Coke.
like expensive, those shoes?
Yeah.
Where are you buying the shoes?
The
Do they go to an op
the,
shop?
the Vans are definitely weed. Nikes are Coke. What's meth? Adidas.
It'd be a stiletto because it's sharp.
Oh, we got some music coming through.
That's pretty nice.
Yeah.
Do people read this behind you often?
They don't. What does it say?
Years ago, I took to leave my home and family, but I vowed to fill the world with vibrant color and endless art. Here's of that promise.
Here's a
Right.
tribute. Oh, okay.
Fascinating.
Yeah, it is fascinating. One of the things that happens in this little bunker is that the artists will just come and paint it. So every week it could look different.
By the way, life hack for anyone who is overseas and wants to take pictures. If you are traveling, find an Asian lady to take the photos for you.
Why?
They know all the angles. They're so good at it. You give a white guy a camera, he'll just like take 2 photos and be like, "Fuck you, here's your camera back."
It's true.
Find like a Japanese girl,
That's
and she'll be like, "We're gonna do a photo shoot right now."
yeah.
It's great.
But they're like I said before, they're also attractive. So
I think that's more your thing than my thing, but I'll roll with it.
subjectivity. Beauty is in the eye of the beholder, like many things are.
Not really relevant, but it just because it made me think of sex. I was in because you said they were attractive.
Okay, well,
I was in Singapore.
You've cranked it up a notch.
I was in Singapore and I stayed at a hotel called the Fragrance Hotel. It was really cheap, and I was like, "Oh, that sounds nice." And I get there, and I'm like, "Oh fuck, I'm in the red light district." And I get to the hotel, and they're like, "David," and I'm like, "Yeah." And they're like, "You're staying for a week?" And I'm like, "Yeah." And they're like, "Okay."
You're going to be very sore after a week.
Man, it was the best hotel I've ever stayed at.
Really?
Because I was the only person there for more than like 3 hours. Because it was one of those love hotels that you book. So I booked it for a week, and every day they were like, "You still staying?" I'm like, "Yeah, it's great." And they're like, "Do you need anything? New sheets? Do you want
Hand job.
any food, any drink?" Like they just wanted to keep me there. It was the best.
So they gave you extra good service.
They gave me really good service because they're like, "Oh, this is the one non-pervert in the entire hotel."
It's true.
Yeah. And then I would tell people, they'd be like, "Where are you staying?" I was like, "Gaylong." And they were like, "Ooh, all right."
Yeah.
I had to get I got a taxi there from the airport, and the guy's like, "Gaylong, huh?" And I'm like, "What do you mean?" He's like, "You're going to have fun." What? So from his perspective, I just got off the plane and then was immediately like, "I got to find a whore right now." That's another travel tip. Stay in the red light district.
Oh, I'm only laughing because I've had that
amazing
thought
service, and not the whatever kind of service you want, I guess. But if you just are looking to travel cheap and you want to be like have a good time, go to Singapore. Stay in the red light district. It's super chill.
David?
Amazing food because everything's open late there because people are stumbling out and they want to have a feed. It's the best.
I'm going to come to David Rose for my travel tips.
You should.
David, you should have your own travel tips.
Yeah,
bloody
starting a blog.
What is it? TikTok. You should do a David Rose travel tips TikTok.
Oh my God, we found this amazing new. I hate those ones, but they're like, "We found this amazing new place on Hosier Lane. It's called Movida," and you're like, one of the most popular restaurants in Melbourne. What the fuck are you talking about?
That's so true.
You're always like, "The tapas are a must." Like, yeah, they only sell tapas.
I know someone that does one of those.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I bet they make bank.
Well, they're starting. Well, they get heaps of free food.
Of course they do.
Tons.
Yeah.
They just get invited to restaurants.
Yeah.
I've received free food from someone like that as
Yeah,
well.
really?
That said, "Oh, I'm gonna do this shoot. I don't want to go alone. None of my other friends will come. Can you come with?"
Perfect.
And they're like, "Oh, it's 8 courses, including 3 drinks,
Oh my God.
dessert." I was like, "What? You're getting all this for free?
Yeah.
We're getting all this for free?"
Yeah.
In,
Having said
in
that,
Hosier Lane, we just get we just get to inhale paint fumes for free.
having said that, I have been to I've been to a bunch of restaurants because I saw them on TikTok. So as much as I'm like, I hate those people, I'm like, yeah, I've got good food out of it.
Yeah. Hey,
There's actually a pizza place I went to in New Jersey, which is, do you know Dave Portnoy? He's the Barstool Sports guy. He has this thing where he'll buy a pizza and he'll take one bite of the pizza, and then based on that, he'll review the restaurant. And he's had thousands of these.
he takes one bite of
a
the pizza.
margarita pizza. It's always a margarita. And
if you mess up a margarita, that's a good pizza.
So he takes one bite, and from that, he'll give you a review. And he's done thousands of them. There was a place near my fiance's old place in New Jersey, and he gave it was one of only 2 places he ever gave a 9 out of 10. And so we went there, and there was this huge line because of the guy's review. And people were coming up to us, like, offering us money to take our place in line. And then, like, when we got the pizza, offering us money for the pizza. This place has been sold out for, like, 4 years straight. Every day you go on their website and they're like, "Sorry, we're sold out again today." Just from this one influencer's reviews.
That's incredible.
Yeah, and they went from just, like, being a little mom and pop shop to, like, the busiest restaurant in their town.
I love those stories, right?
Yeah.
Because I often look at internet culture, and it's hard to look past some of the negative effects that it's had on society.
Yeah.
But then, and all those negative effects, they're obvious, and we can talk about it until the cows come home. And we've brought some of them up during this conversation. But then you hear a story like that, and you're like, if it wasn't for the internet, if it wasn't for influencers, that like the credit where credit's due. I mean, you're talking about it. It's a mum and pop shop. They've probably got a very authentic recipe. They've probably been doing it for a very long time. It's highly unlikely that they would have sold out for 4 years ever before they got that review.
No, and it's only because of that they had that happen. So I mean, yeah.
And now they're succeeding.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
It's
It's
great.
pretty cool.
Yeah.
Pizza was all right.
Yeah. Yeah. It's cool.
It was nice, but we ate it and we
mean-
were like, this wasn't like a 4-hour wait worthy pizza.
I don't know if any pizza's a 4-hour wait
No,
worthy
I don't think
pizza.
so.
You need a pizza for the
I don't
pizza
believe
line.
in waiting. That's one of my things. I don't believe in waiting.
I'm not-
If there's a queue anywhere, I'm like,
Yeah.
nah, don't need to do it.
I'm not a big waiter either.
Yeah.
I don't. No.
Especially in in Melbourne where you're like you want to go to like a restaurant and then someone else is like, oh, there's a line there. I'm always like this exact restaurant is basically 2 doors down.
Yeah.
There's a place that does this exact food,
Yeah.
probably just as well. I can't wait.
Yeah.
That's probably I just have ADD. I just can't wait.
Well, a line is also it's like it's a sheep thing, right? You know, like people will go and line up where other people are.
Also, I think it's a cultural thing. I think there are places that like love a line. That's just like that's part of the experience. The British love a line.
Yeah, I've heard that.
In Taiwan, they love a line. It's like lining up because then it's good because everyone else is lining up.
But I know at Chin Chins, before they open, they'll make people line up.
Ugh, I just can't do it.
They'll be like, oh, wait, we're not just open yet. The waiters are still sorting things out. Even when they are open, they're making people build up the queue.
I'm the kind of person though that like I went and saw Paul McCartney. He's my favorite.
Paul
I love the
McCartney.
Beatles. They're my favorite band of all time.
I'm a man.
Yeah. But I left before the last song because I'm like, I don't want to stand in line. Like, my favorite artist, I will leave early for. I can't do lines. I go insane. I travel so much, and I
That's
go
where you and I are
insane on
different.
planes. Like everyone stands up, and I'm like, oh god.
That's where you and I are different. If it was my favorite artist, I would stay right to the end. I'm letting everyone else go first and just savoring the moment of having just seen them.
Yeah.
Yeah, no way. I'm leaving early. I'm not missing that last song.
I'd rather savor the moment on the tram on the way home before everyone else is on it.
On your way to go back and watch the Kangaroos, Albertson,
Exactly.
take a screamer.
Yeah.
Hey, what I wanted to ask you as well is like, all this travel that you've done, has that been through comedy? Like, are you doing gigs internationally? Is that what it's been, or is
For
it?
legal purposes, no. I have never done a gig overseas without a visa. But yeah, that's one of the great things about comedy is that it's allowed me to go to places I would never have gone.
And so, you've been to the States obviously a few times.
I mean, that was because I met a girl. Like the first time was a holiday, and then I met a girl.
I love the T-shirt, by the way.
Oh yeah. This is from the Comedy Store in Pasadena. I wonder if it still exists.
2021. That was right. That's COVID times.
Yeah. So I went there and I was like, hey, I'm a comic. And I bought a shirt online. So I was like, hey, I'm a comic, just here to pick up the shirt. And they're like, you're a comic? I'm like, yeah. And they're like, oh, I have like all the shirts. And they just gave me a giant pile of them. Yeah, nice people. I like getting shirts from comedy clubs. I didn't play this one, but
That's a cool shirt.
most of the shirts I own are from clubs I've played. I just wear merch.
Really?
Yeah, because I'm like, I do a club and I'm like, hey, do you have a shirt? And they're like, yeah, you can have a shirt.
I want that shirt.
Yeah, it's a good shirt.
Can
right?
I have it?
No. You've asked for 2 items of both.
You didn't bring food.
By the end of the podcast, I'll just be naked on a chair in Hosier Lane. It's like, this wasn't even recorded. He was just mugging me.
Nice shoes.
Yeah. But yeah. I mean, it's allowed me to go to a bunch of and like meet cool people and do cool things. And like, I will go somewhere if I can break even.
Yeah, okay. Which is grouse.
It's just living. You're living for free. You go over. It doesn't cost you any money. You don't make any money, but you get a cool experience.
Hypothetically,
Yeah.
if you did a show overseas, you could make some money.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Depending on where I was, yeah.
that's
Like
cool.
the majority of the people who follow me online appear to be Americans, which doesn't say a lot about me. But like, if I put on a show in like New York,
It's because you're funny.
it's probably
You are funny, otherwise you wouldn't be here.
could be that. If I put on a show in like New York, I could probably sell like maybe 100, 200 tickets, maybe. Not much, but it's like enough that I could do a show.
100 tickets.
Yeah,
What, at like $20 US each?
yeah, something like that.
That's awesome.
Yeah, but you have to get a visa and all that stuff. Like, there's places I could do shows. I wouldn't make my like. If I did a show in India, I could probably sell some tickets, but I wouldn't cover the cost of getting to India.
What if you just went on a tourist visa and you accidentally just got asked to do a comedy show?
That's a great way to get deported. You can. There is a bit of a grey area. You can go and perform but not get paid. So I'm always very careful not to get paid because I don't want to get deported because I have family obligations over there.
They can just donate to your OnlyFans.
There are people who do that. Like they'll go and they'll do a show, but the money gets paid to like someone else, and then they get paid. But it just seems like not
It's shifty.
not enough money to make it worth running that risk.
Yeah,
Especially now with the current people
Because
in
if you
charge.
get deported, you won't be allowed back, and then that means you won't be able to have naps with your mother-in-law.
Exactly. Yeah, and harass Jamaicans in the park. No, so it's not worth it. But yeah, I mean, there's places I can go and I can perform. Yeah, I'm doing Edinburgh this year.
Edinburgh,
Edinburgh
Scotland.
Fringe. Yeah, yeah.
Yep.
There'll be some amount of people there that have followed me online. I don't know how many, but some.
That's wild.
Yeah,
So you've been doing this 10 years.
yeah.
I mean, obviously, like I talked to a few of the comedians about this, the online aspect of it.
Yeah.
You know, how has that evolved? What are you noticing?
As far as I can tell, it doesn't do anything other than give you a bit of an ego boost and help you get booked at clubs that maybe wouldn't have booked you.
Yeah, okay. So you're
Um,
like, look, I've got 40,000
yeah.
followers. Book me.
I don't have the kind of reach or following where it materially like impacts my life to the point where I'm like, hey, I'm doing Melbourne Comedy Festival and it sells out, or I'm going to Singapore and doing a show and sells out. I don't have that, but I have enough credibility. It's a credibility thing, and it's also a bit of a credibility for yourself too, because like, you know, everyone gets insecure and you're like, am I actually funny? Am I any good at this? Like, why am I wasting my time? Should I just go back to working at a law firm? And then you put a reel out and then, you know, like 5 million people see it. You're like, well, all right, I guess I'm doing something right or something really wrong, and everyone's making fun of me. But, you know, that's about as much as I see a benefit from it. Long term, I have no idea if it's... I just try to focus on the craft of getting good at being on stage. And if something fun happens, I'll put it online. Or if it's a new joke I'm working on, I'll put it online. But I don't expect anything from it. And I sort of think it's a little pointless.
Talk to me about the craft of getting good at being on stage. What does that even mean? Because I mean, you talked about the early days, your second show, the Triple J thing, where you had the mic lead wrapped around the thing wrong. Okay, there's obviously a craft to not looking awkward. But then what's beyond that?
I think I heard someone say like the first like 5 years of doing comedy is like you learning how to be comfortable on stage, and then the next 5 years is like you learning how to actually say things that are actually any good on stage. Like the material is one part, the stagecraft is another, and then the just comfort level. Like I really could leave this conversation and go on stage right now and feel fine about it. I could do it, and I have enough confidence in my ability to improvise and talk to people and just let it roll that I wouldn't be worried about performing, and that takes a long time. And then there's the writing element of it, and that is just you either are good at writing jokes or you're not, and you either get better at doing it or you don't, and you just learn by doing. Really, I mean, you can read joke books and stuff, I guess, but yeah, I mean, it's interesting. I was thinking about this last night. Like, the better you get at something, the easier it feels. So if you talk to like John Mayer about playing guitar, you're like, you know, is that a hard riff to play? You'd be like, nah, it's easy for him because he's John Mayer and he's one of the best guitarists ever.
He's played it before.
Yeah, right. So what we are is we're whale watchers, and we're tagging whales out in the ocean for the Japanese to hunt. So when they find a good one, we let them know so they can kill the whale and take it home. How do we know where they are? Oh, well, we have like you guys know like Nerf guns? Yeah, we get Nerf guns and we put a little tracker on it. And then we shoot them. So this is just us recording the latest whereabouts of the whales. Yeah, it's pretty sick.
I've got an app. There's an app. It's on an app.
Yeah, it's called Fish Wish. All right, sweet.
It's how quick you are at making these stories up that really surprises me. I'm like a stunned mullet. I'm like a deer in the headlines.
You're one of the fish, can't you?
I'm like, they look at me and like, I can't even hear what they're saying. They're like, what are you guys talking about? I'm like, oh, fuck, now I've got to come up with a response. You're already there. You're halfway through the Fish Wish stories.
You just got to trust that the next word out of your mouth is going to follow.
Well, I'm taking your lead here. Yeah, this is fun. So you talked about...
What you should do, by the way, at the end of this episode, cut all those up and make it one clip of me just explaining to people what we're doing. I was going to say, I'm going to have a hard time clipping this episode because there's been... like a lot of we're jumping around a bit. Funny. It doesn't matter. It's not the jumping around. It's more like we've taken this so many places that are poignant. Poignant. That's one word I struggle to pronounce. Pigant. Yeah. That's the one I struggle with. What I was going to ask. Sometimes my R's become W's. Or my T's. What is it? Like I'll say like whiff instead of like with. Whiff. Yeah. Or I'll be like... come with me. Rebellion instead of rebellion. Really? Or something. Yeah. Occasionally. Yeah. You're obviously not a Star Wars fan then? The Rebel Alliance. Yeah. Hey, listen, I was going to ask, like, who are you watching at the moment? Who's inspiring you right now?
Like, who are you going, hey, listen, I want that career, or that guy or person makes me laugh?
The more I do comedy, the less I try to watch it because it's very infectious. If you see a style that works, you're like, oh, I should do that. So like, I see a lot of people doing Shane Gillis right now, and I'm doing it too.
How?
All right, there's a couple of things Gillis does on stage, particularly. He holds the mic like that, and he'll be like that. You watch a comedian, and they're going, dude. They say dude a lot and do like that. That's a big tell. They've been watching a lot of Shane Gillis. Also, Gillis has a nervous tick that he doesn't know what to do with his hand on stage. So he puts it behind his back, like that. Just one arm behind his back, and then a lot of comics doing the one arm behind the back thing. Yeah, you notice that people... Because comedy's a weird art form in that, like, you don't learn... You learn by doing. No one teaches it, really. And if you do teach it, you kind of, by definition, sort of suck at it. Like, I've never met a comedy teacher that was good. And
shout out to all the comedy teachers watching this.
Well, it's just a thing. It's like weird how like there are great actors who teach acting. But if you're a great comedian, you're going to be doing it. You're not going to be teaching other people.
That's what they say about everything in life anyway.
It's a strange thing.
If you're a science teacher, you should have been a scientist.
And so there's like have you heard the idea of the signal and the noise? There's like the signal, which is like what you pay attention to, but then the noise is the actual information. A lot of people are missing the signal for the noise with Shane, is that they're doing a lot of like that and that because they notice him killing and they're like, well, he kills when he stands like that. What they don't realize is like it's his voice. It's like it's the way he's talking on stage, the things he's comfortable with saying on stage. So like I do credit him and guys like him, like Mark Norman and all that, with like a lot of there seems to be a looseness coming back to comedy.
Yeah.
Like I have this joke where I say like retarded, and then I go like, retarded's come back, hasn't it? Not the word, I mean the people, but or not the people, I mean the word is what I actually say, because the people aren't back. I haven't seen retarded people in a while. Where'd they go?
You're sitting in front of one.
Well, true, but like no, seriously, like where are the retarded people? But like I don't think I would have said retarded like 5 years ago, and I think like that's a bit of Shane Gillis's influence on me, where I feel more comfortable saying like things that are a little untoward, but you know, with a point behind it. Yeah. That joke doesn't really have a point behind it. That's just an observation. But like I have a bunch of jokes about topics that I probably wouldn't have touched if not for him. But I try not to watch comedy anymore because it gets in my brain. I just have this memory that I any joke I hear I can sort of regurgitate, and then I get nervous that I'm gonna rewrite someone. I've done it before where I've done a joke and then someone's like, "Oh, that's that guy's joke." I'm like, "Ah, shit." So I just try not to.
Makes sense. Because it sits in the subconscious, you know, and then suddenly you're writing and you're like, oh, yeah, this sounds good.
In terms of careers I'd like to have, I don't know about career, but in terms of like fluidity and flexibility and willingness to change, that's one of the reasons I love the Beatles and David Bowie and Bob Dylan. And
you're a big fan of your music, man.
Yeah, and like the Dandy Warhols, like.
Oh, yes, bohemian like you.
Yeah, but what I like artists who change, which you're not rewarded for in comedy. Comedy actually doesn't reward change. Comedy rewards a singular voice. Like Rodney Dangerfield, I don't get no respect. And then he's just that for the next 30 years, you know? Comedy,
interesting.
People like their comedians to say the same. And the ones I love are like George Carlin, who was like one way and then another way and then another way, kept changing, kept adjusting his
Chappelle's
perspective.
a bit like that too.
Chappelle's like that as well. Like you don't have to love what they're doing on stage, but boy, it's fascinating to see them change.
Yeah.
Like, and I love that.
Still be funny.
Yeah, but I love that. Like Bowie, right? Like Bowie's doing his like Ziggy Stardust thing, and then he has a whole bunch of fans that come to him for that, and he's like, yeah, you know what? I'm not feeling this anymore. I'm gonna go do weird cocaine-infused disco for a couple of years, and then a lot of those fans drop off and some new fans come in. Then he's like, yeah, I'm not feeling this. I want to be a pop star. And he goes and does Let's Dance in the 80s and has a #1 dance pop song. And he's like, well, I'm not really into that. I want to be like a jazz musician. Like he just keeps evolving. He was like a chameleon. And I like that. I would like to look back in 10 years and be like, I don't relate to that anymore. That to me is what art is meant to be.
I think that's also a signal that you intend on doing this for a long time, and that you want to stay excited about it.
Yeah, it's not even about relevancy. It's literally just about like keeping yourself in love with what you're doing. Because I think some people chase relevancy and they're just trying to be on whatever the latest cultural thing is, and it's kind of mindless, and they're just doing it because they think that's what they should be doing. I don't think you should chase the audience. I think the audience should chase you.
Yeah, I agree. I mean, I've got a similar, not that this podcast is well known or anything yet, but I think I went through a phase where I'd burnt out a little bit, and I was wondering whether I keep going with this. And it was just audio only at the time.
Yeah.
But I was like, if you're going to come back, you've got to. The number one thing that you've got to make sure of, because you know it's going to be a ton of work. You know that. That's just a given. Is that it's fun. You've got to make sure that you enjoy it.
Yeah.
And so that's how this whole thing came about, doing it
So, I
here.
mean, this one's been a waste, but you'll get there.
This has been so much fun. Honestly, I'm shocked that at some of the just the quick-wittedness of like some of the stories that you're pulling out, and some of these people where they're coming up, and I've never had people come up to us and ask us so much while we're recording. This is not normal, by the way.
Really.
Most of the time they're over there where that Mexican girl is. Did you see what I did there?
Yeah.
I tried to do my.
Well, there's a border between us. That's why she's over there.
And yeah, they're just taking photos. But today they've fully come up.
Yeah, I know.
I did offer them
Great.
chips at one point, and
Yeah,
I sort of
maybe
baited them
it's like
in.
pigeons. You really shouldn't have
That's true.
invited people in.
True. I should throw some pretzels at them all. Start throwing pretzels out in the laneway. Just watch them pick it up.
You know what I think I like about? Well, I just did gigs in Darwin, and I had a good time because the crowd.
yeah. How
it's like
was it?
It's like a big small town. So like they're not as like adept. They don't like experience comedy as much, and so they don't sort of know what the rules are. They don't know you're not meant to talk. So you do a joke, and some guy will be like, "Oh yeah, that happened to me," and you're just like, I just had to at one point. I was like, "Dude, I know it feels like a conversation. I swear I planned earlier. Like it's a one-way street, but thanks for being involved." But like you can't get mad at them because they don't know.
Yeah.
And like when people come up to you and go, "Oh, what are you doing?" It's like, well, why wouldn't you come up and ask?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. Well, yeah, exactly. I mean, I invite it to. I'm open to it.
Yeah.
But I think our old mate, I forget what his name was, the doctor, wanted to tell us some real stories.
Yeah.
And I'm like, well, mate, you don't have a mic. This is not going to work.
Yeah.
But yeah, it's fun. It's a lot of fun. And hopefully you've had fun.
Yeah, it's been a
here.
good time. I've
Yeah.
had to pee this whole time though.
So should we wrap this up? And
Trickling down my leg.
When you're wearing black pants, you
Yeah.
notice the black get blacker.
I know. Yeah. Oh man, I was once doing a show, and I it was my own show, and I had like a burger, and as I was eating, a bit of the tomato sauce went onto my crotch, and I was like, oh fuck, I'm about to go on stage. So I had to go into the toilet and wash my pants, and then hold them up in front of the dryer. I'm literally in there drying my pants.
In your underwear.
And some guy walks in, he's like, "Aren't I seeing your show soon?"
Didn't
And
I
I'm-
pay tickets to
Yeah,
see
and
you?
I was like, yeah, just this isn't part of it, but you got a sneak peek of something only lucky audience members get to see.
The comedian I just bought tickets for is in the
Yeah,
bathroom
yeah.
drying his
Imagine
pants.
if you went and saw like Chappelle and you just went in the bathroom and he was in his underwear.
I'd get an autograph.
You would. Good
Well,
times.
we're being blasted out by some bass here, but this has been a lot of fun, man.
Been a good
Thank
time.
you so much
I've
for
enjoyed
coming
it.
out and doing this.
So what is this podcast again?
Yeah.
What do we do?
I don't even know anymore. I really like the ideal of the whale tagging, though, and
Yeah.
I might just change this podcast completely to talk about
Yeah,
whale.
they've had it too good for too long, the whales.
Yeah, yep, and sell the
It's
data
amazing
to
how like
Japanese.
fine everyone's been with everything I've said. I'm like, oh yeah, we're child trafficking. He's like, yeah, cool. And I'm like, we're hunting whales. They're like, oh great.
I think they're shocked. I think what happens is that there's just a bit of shock, and
Yeah.
they're like, "What?
Yeah.
You're just too quick." I think that part of your brain. You were talking about that part of Trump's brain. I think that part of your brain that is shocked. I think that one has been.
Yeah, it disappeared. Yeah, that's the
Yeah.
problem with comedy. You do it for too long, and then you're like, I'm immune to. I don't like. I was saying I don't get like upset or shocked by like anything anymore. It's probably not good. I probably like don't have enough of an understanding of what other people get upset by, because I'm like, yeah, that's fine. I've heard worse. I've said worse.
You need to go and get a job in a company and
I
sit in a
wouldn't
couple
last- I wouldn't last like a
of
minute.
sit in a couple of meetings.
Well, I was talking to my friend because my friend,
get so-
my friend, black guy, and he gives me a lot of shit about being Jewish. He makes fun of me a lot. He says like horribly anti-Semitic things, and then like he and I will make fun of one another. Like I'll make fun of him. And the other day we were talking about NWA, the rap group.
Yeah, NWA.
Yeah, you know what it stands for? N words with attitude.
No, I thought it stood for New World Order or something like that.
No, it stands for N, but not N words. It's like it stands for the word. Anyway.
Yeah, yeah.
So we're talking about it, and I was like, oh man, that's a really funny name. That's a funny name for a group. And he's like, that's not funny. And I'm like, of course it's funny. Like, it's a funny name. And he's like, that's not funny at all. And then I was like, and then luckily he laughed, and I'm like, that could have been so bad if we weren't friends.
But also, they named themselves that.
It's a funny name.
Yeah,
We should probably cut that part of the podcast out.
No. We're keeping that in.
Oh shit!
Yeah.
I'm gonna get in trouble.
Are you?
Anyway, he thought it was
Is
funny.
someone going to listen to an hour and 37 minutes in?
Imagine that you get to an hour and 37, and then they're like, oh, and then he cancelled it.
And then he said the one thing. The one
Right.
thing.
He liked, my friend liked it, so
Yeah, but I think the point there is that amongst friends, you know, like you can say things and it's taken lighthearted, like what you said before.
yeah.
You know,
Well, true, but also
not
like
facetiously.
that's how comedians talk. Like if you say that to a normal person, and by normal I don't mean like comedians are like better. I mean comedians are like worse people. I'd be in so much trouble if I had a normal job. I would have like legitimately like my organization would have had like a giant HR bill by now because I would have just tried to make a joke.
Well, it's great that you've turned this comedy thing into a full-time thing for yourself.
Yeah, until this episode comes out. Yeah.
Well, I think you're only going to win more fans. I think people, like you said, Shane Gillis and some of those trailblazing comedians in the US are opening comedy up again to be, you know, a little rawer and a little dirtier again.
I like all types of comedy. I loved Hannah Gadsby's Nanette thing. I thought it was awesome. I love like sketch stuff. I love like Nate Bargatze, and I love like, you know, Jim Norton, and like I like everything. I'm not one of those people that's like comedy needs to be opened up. It's like it's all there. Take whatever part of comedy you want. Just don't close any of it off.
Yeah. I agree. And I can tell that you're like that because you're educated as well. And, you know, that makes a huge difference. But anyway, that's beside the point. Where can people see you?
Melbourne Comedy Festival.
That's happening March to April.
And Perth Fringe next week, if this is out by then.
No, not out by next week.
Not out by next week.
We're going to miss Perth.
April.
Are you doing Adelaide?
March in Adelaide. I think it's like March 16th to 20-something.
Sydney?
Not Sydney. And then Edinburgh Fringe.
Edinburgh Fringe.
And then Edinburgh Fringe.
When's Edinburgh Fringe?
August.
Yeah. Nice. That's going to be fun.
Yeah.
Are you looking forward to? Have you ever done that before?
Never done it.
Are you
Probably
looking
never
forward
will
to it?
again. Yeah, it'll be fun. It's a lot of money.
Right.
A lot of money. But
you're investing in going over there.
Basically, yeah.
Did they charge you to be an act?
Yes.
Right.
It's a horrifying amount of money to spend, but that's the job.
It's a once in a lifetime op.
It'll be once in a lifetime for sure. I probably won't ever do it again, but I won't do it once.
Well, that's crazy. They make money both ways, off the acts and off the people buying tickets.
Yeah, that's how all the festivals do it. The actual artists who are the festival make the least amount of money. The people who make the most amount of money are the publicists and the PR people and the festival admin people. Yeah, it is what it is.
That's wild.
Well, it's like anything. You work at a cafe, the floor staff make the least amount of money, even though they're the only people that
can make a coffee.
Yeah. So it is what it is.
Makes sense. Well, Dave, man, it's been so good to have you. Thanks for coming onto the Louis Diaz podcast, if that's what this even is anymore.
Yeah.
And I guess I'd love to do this again with you sometime. But for everyone listening, thanks for being here. How do you do a YouTube thing? Like and subscribe? Is that what you say to them?
Yeah, like and subscribe.
Like and subscribe. Go and find David
Hey
Rose.
guys, if you enjoyed this, go like and subscribe, you know.
Exactly. And go and find David Rose Comedy as well on YouTube, where you can see some of his longer sets. And on, you know what confused me? Your email address, Terrier.
That's just a...
I was so confused. I was like...
I just have that as like a placeholder for the gigs I run. It's all under one thing.
Nice one. Well, yeah, it's been an absolute pleasure to have you, man. Thanks so much, and we'll see you soon.
Good night and good luck.
Good night and good luck. Let's clap this one out. Boom. Thank you, David.
No worries, man.
That was good, man. Do you really...